Do you breathe purple and gold? Are you ready to hoist the colors? Now, time for the most in-depth look at the world of ECU athletics. Welcome in to Hoist the Colors with your host, Stephen Igo on 94.3 The Game. Watch the show live on Facebook and at 943thegame.com. Now, here's your host, Stephen Igo.
All right, welcome in. Hoist the Colors on this Friday, May 24th edition of the show. Unfortunately, another game day for ECU baseball. They are not having today off as a result of last night's or yesterday afternoon's 14-4 loss of Wichita State. It is an elimination Friday. The Pirates will play the Rice Owls once again. So we're counting down the hours or the minutes, depending on which version of the show you're listening to, live or the replay at 12 noon. Until first pitch, we'll have you cover Scott Rogers, Coach O, live from Clearwater. Pirates need a win to extend their stay in Clearwater. 1 o'clock, again, the first pitch, 12:45. Pregame coverage will start with Scott Rogers and Coach O. On our show today, on our abbreviated show, we're going to be joined by Philip Pilkington, who is behind the glass, as always, and by Joseph Sampson, who is proudly wearing his New York Jets hat. He is our usual Friday guest. He could not make it to Thursday's watch-along, Joe, but outside of missing out on some delicious Basil's pizza, I think you lucked out. Happy anniversary to you and your girlfriend as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Went to Molino's, had the ribeye. That was probably one of the better steaks I've had in 2024. And then, just normal Italian. I'm sorry, I'm getting thrown off by Philip's goatee for a second. That was a little bit of a shock factor here. You look like a true NASCAR fan right now.
I appreciate it.
But
It's too hot to leave the full beard.
That's fair. I'm baby face. God did not bless me with the ability to grow a beard, so I get it. I just threw me for a second. It's almost Patrick Johnson reminiscent.
I cannot believe you just
comparing
said that.
Philip's facial hair to Patrick Johnson.
I mean, we do have the same goatee cut now, but my hair, I totally went with a haircut, though. Like, I'm way shorter than P-Man when it comes to the
yeah,
hair.
no, that's not the P-Man.
Yeah. P-Man, to be fair, has way better hair than I do. His flow's
does have a
better.
full head of hair.
Yeah. P-Man's got great hair. I don't.
Philip Pilkington is wearing his William Byron hat. He is going to Charlotte for Sunday's race. How fired up are you, Philip?
I'm excited. Knock on wood, the weather's looking good right now. Hope to see Kyle Larson make history and do 1,100 miles in one day. It'll only be the second driver to do so. But I'm excited. We're going to be able to make it out to the Xfinity race tomorrow, make the Cup race on Sunday. So it's going to be a good week. We're going to consume a few nice cold brews and probably have a very carnivoristic diet. But, hey, when it's a bunch of men hanging out, that's what you do. It's all a carnivore diet.
I will be heading up to D.C. here right after the show for Mariners Nationals the next 2 days. So we should address, by the way, that Joseph Sampson's Yankees did come back and win the final 2 games. So we get the old 4-game split, 2-2, Joe. So I guess best case scenario for both of us.
Yeah, I mean, it's what we needed. You guys had probably 2.5 games worth of the best baseball I've seen out of a team that we've played this year besides the Orioles. So hats off to you. But also, how is it that Nestor Cortez is the pitcher that gets y'all?
That's just typical Mariners, man. They make the worst. And Nestor Cortez is obviously not the worst pitcher. He's just so unique. But he's very hittable, I would say. And the Mariners love making hittable pitchers look like Cy Youngs. But I'll tell you what, Gil, I don't know how you pronounce his first name. He is nasty who threw the Yankees yesterday. Yeah,
Luis.
he is. He's a problem.
Wait, who else is going to DC? It's you, Wags, and Scott Lorbatcher going with you guys?
Yep.
Okay.
Scott Lorbatcher, Wags, and I were meeting shortly in Rocky Mount, and then we're going to make the drive to D.C. We're going to watch the game tonight, 6:45 Eastern first pitch, awkward time, and then Saturday, 4 o'clock or 4:30 first pitch, and then we'll head back right after the game. So short, but 2 games. Was really hoping ECU would win Thursday so we don't have to deal with covering the game today on the road, but hey, we're going to figure it out. And so the Pirates lose, guys, 14-4, and news in from Brian Bailey this morning. So I actually texted last night. We had the post-game press conference with Cliff Godwin, and I texted some sources last night, and it was unclear at that time if Cliff Godwin would be suspended or not. And so that was like 8 or 9 last night. So the conference was still figuring out what to do. According to Brian Bailey, who is in Clearwater, The American has suspended Cliff Godwin for the next 2 games from the issue at second base involving Dixon Williams from yesterday. The first game will be at the Rice game today. And obviously, if ECU loses, Cliff Godwin would be suspended for the first game of a regional. And I got to be honest, guys. I look, I don't know what was said. I guess there's a rule where if you come onto the field and it's deemed that you delay the game, you get an automatic suspension from that. But I think the American has a major issue with just its entire baseball infrastructure. And this can turn into a big picture. But Cliff also talked about after the game about how ECU is basically the only 1 seed in the country playing on Tuesday. You've got a double elimination tournament that burns through every arm. If ECU comes out of the losers bracket, guys, they're going to have to win 6 games in 6 days. And like, what's, is that good for anybody going into the postseason? I think the American is so short-sighted with this baseball infrastructure that it really needs to be looked at top to bottom. We'll go around the horn here. Joe, your thoughts on this news and just the American with how they treat baseball in general.
The first thing I need to get to is, where does the American get off that they're ejecting Cliff Godwin for a conversation at second base about something, but the UTSA manager can bring a new pitcher in and pelt a guy 3 times with a pitch, get ejected himself, and do the next game? It's ridiculous. The infrastructure for the American, we already knew it was going to be an issue with the new teams coming in, and they added these teams because they wanted more baseball in the conference, and I understand that. It hasn't worked. You got UTSA as a 2 seed who probably, unless they steal a bit, is not going to get into the tournament even as like a 3 or a 4 seed in a regional. So at this point, you've now chalked up possibly your best opportunity to be represented in this without the automatic bid as like an at-large or a host by having a Tuesday game, burning every arm known to man. Trey Savage, obviously, thoughts and prayers going to him as he's recovering after the partially collapsed lung. Like, you weren't planning for that. But ECU is not in a position to burn through Aaron Groller, burn through Jackson DiLorenzo, burn through a Chris Kaler, burn through an Ethan Norby and everybody else in between. And all of a sudden now you sit here Friday after you've played 2 games in the last 3 days, and who are you going to throw? So the American is a huge problem on their hands.
Philip, what are your thoughts on this fiasco and situation?
I do want to go on a rant, but I want to ask the two of you guys a question. And Igo, you may know this, but you mentioned that Cliff Godwin is suspended for the next 2 games, and that could be potentially the first game of regional if they lose today. To me, that doesn't make sense, because if the conference is suspending him, shouldn't he just be suspended for the first conference play game of next season? Like, how do they suspend him if we're playing, some team out of the MEAC? It's not a conference game. Like, that doesn't make sense.
It's a valid point because, Bailey's tweet says the American has suspended him. So I guess
not the NCAA.
Can he appeal that?
I just think the whole thing is a joke, man. I mean,
it's definitely a joke.
I mean,
you need to appeal it.
It's look, I mean, the American is just, they look out for these teams in football and basketball, and now in baseball, it's almost like I'm going to say they're trying to screw ECU, but they do nothing to help out East Carolina. Like, you want East Carolina to make the College World Series, yet you're suspending the coach of the year for 2 games. Like, I can understand 1 game, but for 2 games, it potentially hurt them in the postseason. Like, what is the American doing here?
The issue is,
even if they came,
I was going to say, the issue is baseball is not a moneymaker, so they don't give a crap. Yeah, would it look good on them if ECU made the College World Series? Yes, but does it actually bring in more money, like NCAA tournament runs and like bowl games? No. So they just don't care. I think what it was, they had a flawed system presented to them. They went with it, and they just don't care enough to change it. They can change it. It's their system. All they have to do is go and change it, but they clearly don't care enough to. And I'm not blaming Mike Oresco when I say this. I'm really not. I don't know whose fault it is. It's somebody's. It's probably someone who's head over baseball. But maybe with a new commissioner coming in, he'll at least be like, wow, this baseball system's flawed. Maybe I should step up and do something. But the problem is, all they're worried about is basketball and football, which I get that's what makes money. But again, you still have to protect the best teams. I mean, heck, softball is single elimination. Softball, where a pitcher can throw back-to-back days, 70-some-odd pitches, make that double elimination. Like, That's fine. Those girls want to play more games. Baseball, you want to play as little amount of games as possible. The best ability is availability, and you're not available when you're playing too many baseball games. It's just horrendous. It's idiotic, and whoever came up with the system, I get it. It was the first year of the conference, and this is what they've ran with. But somebody needs to step up and say, hey, you know what? The system doesn't work. I don't know, man.
Joseph, your any other thoughts? I know you're about to make a point.
Yeah, my only point would have been if you wanted to suspend him the 2 games and you want to get that point across that we're not going to allow this and we got to take a stand here, suspend him for the rest of the AAC tournament, however many games that is. Cliff Godwin has been suspended indefinitely for the continuation of the AAC tournament. That's all the verbiage had to be. But now that you've added this 2-game thing in, yeah, is he suspended for regionals against the MEAC team? If they play UC Irvine, who's flying all the way across, is it without Cliff Godwin? If they have to go to Corvallis, are they playing Oregon State without their manager for the first game? It just leads itself to too many implications and legal loopholes that you could have just said they're suspended Cliff Godwin for the remainder of the American tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to your earlier point, Joe. Like UTSA, whether it was the manager or not, brought in a pitcher to throw at somebody. You had a guy run
3
over somebody at
pitches.
second base. Yeah, and so like, where's the discipline for that? Where you could actually hurt someone, whereas Cliff Godwin was just on the field. We weren't there, but clearly the
Right.
Wichita State fielders were barking at Dixon. Dixon probably had some things bad to say. Cliff, probably got on the field, and I don't know if he said anything to players or what, but like 1-game suspension is fine. But I mean, I just don't understand why you would make it a multiple game suspension, even if it's in the rule book. Go back and make a clarification or make an exemption. ECU is about to head into the damn postseason, and we're suspending the coach of the year, who has a legit team that could go to the College World Series if things break the right way. It ticks me off, man. The American is a joke when it comes to this stuff.
Even if you're going to do it, even if that is the rule book and you're going to do it, at least just go back and say, also UTSA's manager, da-da-da-da-da. Like you said, actually trying to hurt people as opposed to saying words that you're not supposed to say. What happened to Sticks and Stones? I mean, come on.
It's the same conference that suspended somebody over a damn sandwich.
Ooh, yeah, that's true.
This is true.
We
Very
need
true.
to leave the American. We got to be like Dallas Baptist, get in a different conference in baseball.
We should have gotten the ACC call, but SMU decided to buy out of their death penalty from 25 years ago finally and weasel their way into the Atlantic Coast Conference because nothing says the Atlantic Coast Conference like California and Texas, but that's another fight.
Hey,
Zach
at least
Smith
the Gulf
says-
of Mexico is part of the Atlantic Ocean, so they're kind of
That's true. At
more
least
so
that-
than California.
Yeah,
Very
but Dallas
Just being a
is
smart
not.
butt.
Zach Smith says that John Gilbert is the one who needs to speak up about this. John is, I believe, he's already either flown to Indianapolis for the NCAA selection committee or something. So he is not in Clearwater, from my understanding. But yeah, I mean, this is this is a big deal. I mean, not to have your manager, your head coach potentially going into the postseason. I mean, obviously it gives you more incentive to win today so he can serve out a suspension in Clearwater. But I mean, ECU is on the hosting bubble right now, according to some projections. So you could be in a vital 2-3 game without your head coach, next week. So, I mean, this is just, it's just a joke, man. I'm sorry, but the American has got to figure this out. I mean, you cannot allow this to happen. I understand a 1-game suspension. I don't, Dixon, I guess, is automatically suspended since he was ejected. Is he serving a 2-game suspension too? I don't know.
I don't know the verbiage.
The one thing I will
just
say about
complete
this
crap.
situation, if this is going to happen, which it's dumb, we can sit here and be mad about it all day, aren't you glad that Jeff Palumbo is going to be the guy who has
Yeah,
to fill
100%.
it? Like,
Yeah.
is there a team that feels more comfortable in the situation and the hand that ECU has been dealt than ECU right now? I say no, because I don't think there is an assistant coach in the country to the level of Jeff Palumbo.
And he's been with Cliff the whole time. So he's going to, he's going to know for being with him for 10 years beyond that as an assistant, like he's going to know what Cliff is going to do in many situations. So, and I mean, I'm sure there's a way to communicate. Cliff Godwin could let him know what pitcher we're going to go with in certain situations. So
Bang on a trash can. We're bringing in Charlie Hodges.
yeah, gosh. Well, that news from Bailey this morning sent us on a rant. We could talk a whole 40 minutes about that. I tell you what, let's go ahead and get our first break in. We'll come back. We'll actually talk about the game today. I mean, at this point, there's really nothing else to say about Rice and ECU. This will be the 5th time in 8 days we watch these two teams play baseball. But do have news that Zach Root is scheduled to start. So we'll get into that discussion and more. We also got to have some NASCAR picks towards the end of the show as well, as it'll be a big Sunday in the racing world overall. So we'll get into those picks too. This is Hoist the Colors on a Friday.
New Toyotas, 0 down and only $369 a month at Greenville Toyota during the Great Rate Sales Event. Buy with 0% or get Corollas, $369 a month with 0 down. This is not a lease, you own it. Plus, get our Greenville Advantage at Greenville Toyota.
Acre Station Meat Farm, along with Lane Angus Beef, bring you Farm to Fork Beef.
Stock your freezers now with affordable beef boxes, just in time for the grilling season.
Farm to Fork Beef brings quality local beef to your family. From your traditional butcher shop, Acre Station Meat Farm. Come on down to Acre Station Meat Farm and find out why we're #1 in fresh cuts and friendly service.
Acre Station Meat Farm, Highway 32 North, Pinetown.
Other restaurants claim their food is fresh and fast, but are they friendly? At Moore's, you're treated like family the minute you walk into their doors. With locations in Winterville, New Bern, Swansboro, Morehead City, and Jacksonville. We've been practicing what we preach since 1945. At Moore's, our barbecue is slow cooked and smoked over real wood daily until it's so tender it's falling off the bone. Combined with our fresh chicken, cooked-to-order seafood, and homemade fixins, we're sure you'll agree. If it's not Moore's, it's less.
You know what the problem is with standard belts? Usually you have to choose between too tight or the opposite, too loose. But with Anson Belt and Buckle, you don't have to choose. We got rid of the holes and instead have a track system designed for micro-adjustability. That way you can enjoy a perfect fit every time. Anson Belt and Buckle. Find your perfect fit today.
When a place is as special as this, you don't want to change a thing. You simply want to enjoy it, just as it is. That was our inspiration behind Bow Coast West, our newest community in Beaufort, North Carolina. Embrace all that we love about this very special place and make it easy for families to enjoy all that this coastal lifestyle has to offer. Be inspired. Bow Coast West.
Dum-dum-dum. Get low, get low, get low. 369, ooh, she fine. Hoping she can sing it to me one more time. Get low, get low, get low, get low.
Grab a Pepsi Wild Cherry and get wild.
Ready to save thousands with a great rate. Get 0% financing at Greenville Toyota during the Great Rate Sales Event. Shop our massive inventory of new Toyotas, available as low as 0%. Hurry to Greenville Toyota today, where our volume saves you money.
What's happening?
Tell me what's happening. Every ECU fan's one stop for all things ECU athletics. This is Hoist the Colors with Stephen Igo on 94.3 The Game.
All right, welcome in, Hoist the Colors. Welcome back in, Hoist the Colors on this Friday. So if you're listening to our live edition, we are streaming live, an abbreviated show. If you're listening to our radio edition, this is being replayed from this morning. So guys, during the break, I am in the midst of putting together an email to the conference office. Joe Sampson with us, Philip Pilkington. We just got the news in our live edition that Cliff Godwin has been suspended for 2 games. So I'm emailing the conference office asking for clarification, essentially why. I made the comment that it was tough to tell on the video feed during the ejection exactly what happened. So we'll see if the conference office replies and what they say. Joe Sampson is with us. So moving to the game, ECU Rice scheduled to start at 1 o'clock. We will see Zach Root, is the word I'm getting, start the baseball game if everything goes well in the pregame and there's nothing unexpected. So this will be his first appearance since April 20th, I believe. How important is it for Zach Root just to get back on the mound, Joe?
It's extremely important. If you want any chance at a possibility to win a regional and put yourself in a position to win a super regional, you have to have Zach Root ready to go in that game 2 slot. And now with your Savage, who knows what his pitch count's going to be coming back. I mean, yes, obviously there was no complications with his lung, but you still aren't 100% sure as to like what's going to be his proper build up, if he's got to kind of put himself in a pitch count and monitor that. And Zach Root's going to be no different. So I expect 50 pitches max out of Zach Root, which might give you 3 innings, could give you 3 2/3 innings, but I'm not anticipating him to go the distance in today, but it's extremely important if you want to go as far as you do.
Zach Root, we saw Whitelands for Sheeman pitch 25 pitches, knocked it out of the first inning yesterday, struggled with command. There's just so much up in the air, Philip, with the pitching staff at this point. We don't know Savage's, really his status, to be fair. He was in the dugout yesterday. We don't really know the effectiveness of Shinkman, Zach Root. So it's just, I don't know, a lot of uncertainty. So I think it would make Pirate Nation feel a lot better, even if it's just 2 innings. Zach Root goes out and throws pretty well today.
Well, it would make them feel better because, A, you would feel like you can definitely use them for a regional. Also, if they want to win this game, I think they need at least 2 to 3 innings out of Zach Root, because without that, I don't know where these 9 innings are coming from. Now, with that being said, you have to be cautiously optimistic. We do not know exactly what was going on with Zach Root nor Wyatt Lungsford Cheekman, but I've heard ramblings, and these are all rumors, saying that the injuries were similar. And if the recovery is similar, and all this is true, and it's clear that Wyatt has had some command issues, which he has, first in Tulane, secondly yesterday, you're a little worried about Zach. Now, Zach's been out a little longer. Zach hasn't had these 2 spot appearances, so maybe a little better, a little more optimistic, but just because he's back doesn't mean anything, right? He could be rusty. He could have command issues. Let's hope not. But to your point, I go, yes, if we do get 2 innings out of him today, and he looks, and I'm not saying he's got to look like Zach Root, like a guy who's going to be a Friday night ace next year, but if he just looks like a serviceable pitcher, and we can go to him next weekend, in a perfect world, he throws next Sunday in Game 3 of a regional, and that's all you need out of him, because you win it in 3 and you sweep it. And if you get a good outing out of him today, and that's the next time you feel the need to use him, if you can go Norby Friday, Trey Saturday, him Sunday, I think we're feeling pretty good. But, hey, a lot can happen today.
No doubt. A lot of questions, and even, what Trey's status will be next week if he can go, with the partially collapsed lung. We'll see. So, yeah, just a lot of uncertainty right now, ECU baseball, and we'll see how today plays out. With Zach Root expected to start. Tucker Alch will be going for Rice, right-hander. And I tell you what, nothing fires me up more than ECU Rice, Joe. This will be the 5th time we have seen East Carolina play Rice in baseball. Maybe if this was like 2006, I'd be pretty fired up, and Wayne Graham was still leading the Owls to regionals, super regionals, Omaha appearances. But this Rice team has struggled, and it's one of those baseball things too. Like, you can only beat a team so many times in a row before they win one. And this is the 5th consecutive game. If ECU wins, they will lose points in the RPI. So I guess don't lose it so you don't get crushed in the RPI. Easier said than done. But your thoughts on another matchup with Rice, just from a mental psyche standpoint?
My first thought is RPI sucks. So hang that from the rafters, put it on a billboard, do whatever you got to do, and I'll sign it. RPI sucks. It's the worst possible metric of evaluating things, because you shouldn't be punished for winning. You can only play who's on your schedule. Obviously, ECU playing Rice now for the 5th time in 8 games? At some point, how am I going to get punished for beating a team? And I think we're 4-0 going for 5-0, or are we 3-1?
We're 4-0.
We're 4-0 going for 5-0. And at some point, we're going to get punished for winning 5 straight against Rice. So thank you to the American Athletic Conference for making this the way that it is. And thank you to RPI for making me feel bad about beating a team for the 5th time in a row. I can't lie to you. There's no excitement in the building. You name that guy who's starting for Rice today. I've never even heard of him. And we cover the college baseball scene in the American. He's not a premier arm of theirs by any means. He'll probably be an opener, possibly 1 to 3 innings max. I wouldn't anticipate him going the full thing because Rice is going to treat this like it's a game 7. There is no tomorrow. They're going to throw everybody possible and try and wound their way and fall into the championship to steal an automatic bid because that's their only hope at this point. And that's how it's going to be. It's going to be an ambush, much like it was when ECU played UTSA that first series in conference play. Then it's just going to be hit after hit after hit after hit and see whose arms survive.
Yeah, this reminds me a lot, guys, of last year. East Carolina swept USF on the road, then had to play them multiple times in the conference tournament, and their RPI dropped despite making the conference championship game like 7 spots. And this, all right, so ECU got swept at Tulane. I think their RPI dropped to 12, maybe 14. I can't remember the exact number. Either way, ECU has gone 4-1 since that time, and they are now down to 18 in RPI. And even if they win today, they'll probably be, barely inside the top 20. So they essentially ECU could go 5-1 in the last 6 baseball games and drop out of hosting just because they're playing Rice and other teams are playing better teams. Like, you shouldn't be punished for that. Philip, I just think the whole system has to be, there's these dudes that cover the SEC that get off on, East Carolina RPI dropping so another SEC or ACC team can host. Like, it just shouldn't be this way, man. I'm getting really ticked off today.
No,
Thanks, American.
It shouldn't be this way, and we see it in basketball. And the great thing is the basketball committee has proven that they do not punish Gonzaga for having a lackluster conference tournament or a lackluster conference schedule. They say, you know what, you went out and won the Maui Invitational, or you did this, that, and the other, and out of conference, and they reward Gonzaga, or they reward St. Mary's, or we've seen other teams come from lower conferences, Murray State, and be rewarded due to the fact that they played a very good out-of-conference schedule. It seems that the baseball committee is much different than the basketball committee, and they're unfortunately punishing teams. Now, I think if we're neck and neck with a team and they deem us tied and we defeat UAB and they defeat Kentucky, of course, they had a better win if you viewed us as tied. But and I'm all for granting teams for winning better games. Their argument is, hey, we're not punishing ECU, we're just rewarding the other team, which I'm fine with if they do it correctly, but it seems like that's not what they're doing. These teams can go out there and lose games, and as we saw with the top 4 teams in the SEC 2 days ago, they all lost, and they all had to play each other in elimination games yesterday, and then ECU's just being punished for showing up. I joke all the time, we would be better off faking that the whole team has COVID today and not showing up than showing up and winning the baseball game, and it shouldn't be that way.
Absolutely. I mean, and you got to take into account, if ECU has Trey Savage yesterday, they're 2-0 right now in the conference tournament. There's no doubt in my mind. So, how does the committee take that into account? Joe, what do you think that the presence of John Gilbert being on that committee? I know he's going to recuse himself when ECU is discussed, but that's got to help ECU. I think there's just so much. There's a lot that has happened in the last month for ECU baseball, and I think having him there to maybe help either explain or remind could help ECU in this hosting picture. Because right now, D1 has them as the 16 host seed out of 16 teams. Baseball America has them as the 15. You've got Duke and Mississippi State knocking on the door of hosting spots according to those projections. So I don't know. What's your take on that and just John Gilbert being a part of the process?
I think John Gilbert being a part of the process is possibly the best opportunity you have to kind of put some context to some things. This is an ECU team that early in the season beat the number 8 seed nationally in a series where you split it and then you play one neutral site. That's a very hard thing to do. This is an ECU team that's played multiple top 10 teams midweek. There's context to all of these wins and losses for ECU, and then you get to the back half of the season and you're down. Clearly, Trey Savage didn't have his best stuff. We didn't know what it was. Now we do. You've been down as Zach Root. You've been throwing Ethan Norby every other game possible for the last 2 weeks now because that's who you trust without the law firm and Wyatt Lungsford and Shankman. So you just have to have that kind of conversation. And obviously he'll recluse himself, and we're not going to sit here and say he's going to tamper, but he can be like, yeah, but we were doing this prior to that. Like, this RPI isn't really indicative. We swept this series. Like, we beat this team bad. We went on the road. We beat them bad. We went to Memphis. We swept them there. And those kinds of things, just to give a little context to those situations. Because when you look at Arkansas, you look at Kentucky, you look at Mississippi State beating Ole Miss now in the tournament. You look at Tennessee, how they've handled things. Texas A&M. You've got like 4 teams in the SEC alone who are vying for that top 5 spot. And there's got to be some kind of conversation. Hey, at some point, one of these teams has to lose to another, and that's got to hurt, not help.
A couple of, one big thing to watch today is Liberty. I think they take on Louisiana Tech in the Conference USA tournament. So they just snuck to the 120 RPI spot by beating Sam Houston State, and that makes ECU's sweep of Liberty on the road a quad 2 sweep. So ECU going into yesterday was 2-7 quad 2. They're now 6-7, and they're 5-2 quad 1. So that's a record of 11-9 versus the top 2 quads in the country. You have the number 2 non-conference RPI, number 7 non-conference strength of schedule, a series win over the number 3 RPI team, projected national seed North Carolina. So, I mean, yes, the RPI is at 18, but you look at Duke's non-conference strength of schedule, 213. Mississippi State's non-conference strength of schedule, 129. UC Santa Barbara has a weak non-conference strength of schedule. Indiana State has a high RPI, but they don't have any massive series wins. So I still think ECU is going to host, even if they were to fall today, but I can see why people are projecting them out just based on RPI. But I think if the committee goes deeper, Philip, there's a lot for ECU still to have. It's just, is the committee going to handle it that way? And that's the ultimate question, because right now the projections are based off basically solely RPI.
Well, if the committee doesn't do a deeper job or deeper dive, shouldn't they all be fired? Because that's their job.
Yes.
At the end of the day, if we just went off RPI, why do we have a committee? Your number 1 is number 1, and so on until you run out of teams. So you obviously don't take 1 through 64 because you have your automatic qualifiers. So you fill all them in as 4 seeds, and then you just take the RPI. So if that's the issue, or if that's how we're going to do things, get rid of the committee, save us the fun of Selection Monday, and just on Sunday night say, yep, here's the final RPI. There were 16 automatic qualifiers that weren't top whatever in RPI, so that leaves the top 48 teams in RPI to be the teams in, and we're just going to send teams geographically what makes sense and not pair any teams that are in the same conference. Boom, there you go, done. See, look, I just did the job. So hopefully they dive a lot deeper in, not only for our sake, but just the sake of, what their job is and why we have them.
All right, let's get our final break in. We'll come back. We'll continue this discussion. I'll give you what the RPI ramifications are in case the committee again leans on that this year for the ECU game today. We'll discuss that, and then we got to get some racing picks in. Huge day in racing on Sunday. Philip, of course, heading to Charlotte. We'll discuss that and much more to wrap up the show. This is Hoist the Colors on a Friday.
Hi, I'm D.R. Alligood.
And I'm his daughter, Jessica.
For 11 years, we have built quality driveways and parking lots for both your residential and commercial needs. We also offer free on-site quotes to have your custom driveways built the way you want.
252-946-1227.
This is about you, your family, and the health of all who live in Eastern North Carolina. This is about the transformation of a health system into something more powerful and more human, about creating new ways to treat disease and keep you well. This is about ECU Health, which is to say, it's really all about you. ECU Health. Minds, hearts, purpose.
Your confidence makes everything look good. You see the world in vivid color, not black and white. Swing through your neighborhood Fantastic Sam's Cut in color and let our experienced stylists take you from everyday to extraordinary.
Fantastic Sam's hair salons are locally owned and operated. Our full-service salons are conveniently located in Goldsboro, Kinston, Greenville, New Bern, Jacksonville, and Calabash. Stop in today at Fantastic Sam's, where the possibilities are endless.
Hi, I'm D.R. Alligood.
And I'm his daughter, Jessica.
For 11 years, we have built quality driveways and parking lots for both your residential and commercial needs. We also offer free on-site quotes to have your custom driveways built the way you want.
252-946-1227.
Living easy is the sound of children laughing as you make memories with neighbors and friends. It's the sound of nothing at all. It's the smell of the salt air. Hear the waters against the marsh grass. See the beauty of our coast, Bow Coast, located in Beaufort, North Carolina. Southern living's best small town.
You know what the problem is with standard belts? Usually you have to choose between too tight or the opposite, too loose. But with Anson Belt and Buckle, you don't have to choose. We got rid of the holes and instead have a track system designed for micro-adjustability. That way you can enjoy a perfect fit every time. Anson Belt and Buckle. Find your perfect fit today.
Everything you need to know in the world of ECU athletics. This is Hoist the Colors with Stephen Igo on 94.3 The Game.
All right, final segment here, Hoist the Colors, Friday, May 24th. If you're listening to our radio edition, about to throw it to Scott Rogers, Coach O, as ECU takes on Rice in an elimination game in Clearwater. So the implications of this game today from an RPI perspective, again, for the fifth consecutive time playing Rice, ECU will lose RPI points for playing the game. They lose -2, not spots, but points. So, for example, Duke is 13 points behind ECU for 18th. In the formula. ECU would drop to, they would stay at 18 by winning for now. If they lose, they would lose 51 points, which would drop them all the way to 24. So just winning the game is going to be crucial, but it's going to be hard for ECU not to lose any ground given the state of the league and the teams they're playing in the days ahead. They'd have to beat Wichita State twice on Saturday just to make it to the championship game if they win today. All right, Joseph Sampson is hanging out, Philip Pilkington as well. So let's wrap up today, guys, with some racing talk. It is Sunday's the biggest day in racing. You guys know a lot more than me, but you got the Formula One Grand Prix, you got the Indy 500, you also got the Coca-Cola 600. So we'll start with Philip here. Give us your preview of the day, and y'all are going to make some picks, it sounds like, for along with Patrick Johnson.
Well, Patrick hasn't texted me his picks yet, so I don't know if Patrick's getting in on this. He was supposed to. But, yeah, it's the best day in auto racing. So, F1 runs through the streets of Monaco, the second smallest country in the world, only behind Vatican City, only 0.8 of a square mile, and they run through the streets there. And the whole track, surprisingly, despite being over 2 miles long, is all in the streets of Monaco. It's beautiful. I'd love to sit on a yacht in the harbor and watch the race, and it's going to be phenomenal. Sunday afternoon, Indy 500, weather permitting. This one could be a little ugly. Kyle Larson is trying to be the second driver only to complete all 1,100 miles. Tony Stewart did it back in 2001, and he's going to try and run the Indy 500 where he's going to start fifth and then run the Coca-Cola 600 that night in the race that starts in the evening, hot hours, and ends under dark. A lot of pressure on those crew chiefs. Joe?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I don't know if Larson's going to get it done. The weather might not hold up, and that's not me being pessimistic. I'm just a little concerned about that. I like Herta in the Indy 500 race. I think this is the year he finally puts it together. Monaco, as you pointed out, is one of the slowest tracks and fastest tracks at the same time. And I say that to say this. Your lap times are going to be a minute 10, but once you get bunched up in the back of the pack there, you're looking at hard racing on those tight lines, trying to make sure that you don't ruin your race by trying to overtake, because it doesn't happen in Monaco.
So Larson, if there's a delay, is he just going to hop on his private jet and go to the NASCAR race? Like what happens in that scenario?
I don't know. Justin Allgaier is on standby, but then he wouldn't have competed in all 26 regular season races, and it could make him ineligible for the playoffs. So I think at the end of the day, you got to make the decision that's based off, what series is putting a roof over your head and putting food on the table so you feed your family. I'd say you got to ditch Indy, but who knows?
All right, so do you have y'all made picks yet, or do y'all want to make official picks here?
I'm good to go ahead and make picks.
All right, let's go, Philip. I'll just make a pick for NASCAR,
Okay.
so I'll let y'all go first.
Well, I'm going to go Max Verstappen for the F1 race, Joe.
I'm going to go George Russell for the F1 race. Mercedes had great pace all of FP1. Good. They did a 1:11 actually for their fastest time. Oscar Piastri, I believe, was P2 and Lewis was P1, but I think George Russell will get priority with Lewis leaving next year for Ferrari.
I like it. I went with the easy one. You went with the tough one. I'm going to go Joseph Newgarden to win the Indy 500. If he does it, he will go back-to-back. The last time someone went back-to-back was Elio Castroneves, 01-02. 01 was the first year of Tony Stewart doing the double successfully. This one is going to be the year that Kyle Larson also does 1,100 miles and makes history.
We'll see if he does. I like Herta. Also, look for Alex Palou. I think he's got a really good shot, especially with how that car's been running all year. But I really think the American finally gets it done this year. Igo, we'll go to NASCAR.
Yeah, go ahead, Igo. Take it away.
Coca-Cola 600. I'm not making this pick just because of Philip, but Charlotte guy William Byron, I think he gets it done in Charlotte. I'm going William Byron to win the Coca-Cola 600, and it may be the best night of Philip's life if that happens. Joe,
you want to take it? Go ahead, Joe.
I'm going to go the big number 6. The racing gods have spoken to me. Keselowski will win in Charlotte this weekend.
Well, Igo picked Willie B. We had Bob Pockers on PJ's show yesterday. He picked Willie B. Never seen my favorite driver win in person. That changes Sunday night. The hometown kid brings it home. 4th win of the season.
Hope he gets it done for you, man. All right, we are out of time, and we are going to be out for the weekend, obviously. We'll be back 2 o'clock Memorial Day for a selection show special. Patrick Johnson and I will have you covered there at 94.3 The Game, so we'll talk to you then. Enjoy the rest of the baseball this weekend. We'll see you Monday.
This has been Hoist the Colors with your host, Stephen Igo. Tune in weekdays at noon for all things ECU sports. Get a recap of the show at 943thegame.com, on Twitter, Facebook, or anywhere you get your podcasts. We're back Monday with more of Hoist the Colors on 94.3 The Game.